the cake's not going to bake no matter how long you wait for it. So we have to do the full process, and the thing is attentive chanting. So attentive means wherever the mind wanders, we bring it back. Doesn't matter what else is going on in our life, this is an opportunity for, regardless of whatever else is going on around us, just to take our mind to Krishna. And because Krishna is non-different from his holy name, when we chant Krishna's name, then we're associating with Krishna. So if Krishna was to come into the temple just now, everybody go like, wow, that's amazing. He'd be falling down over him and things. We wouldn't be thinking, oh yeah, Krishna, there he is, fine, no problem. What's on my phone, right? So when we're chanting japa and looking at our phone or doing some housework at the same time, or whatever else we're doing, we're chanting and we're cooking at the same time, then that's just like inviting Krishna. And then when he comes, we say, okay, Krishna, just wait there till I'm ready. So Krishna is not our butler, he's not our servant. We're actually supposed to understand that we're a servant of Krishna. This is why we're chanting, please engage me in your devotional service. So when we talk about this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is a prayer to engage in the service of the Lord. And it doesn't just mean here, now. It means eternally. It means that we want to adopt that mood, that service mood, that whatever Krishna wants of us, then that's what we're going to do. And that's eternally. Developing the mood of his eternal servants and re-establishing our own eternal constitutional position. So I thought we'd read Srila Prabhupada's purport to the Maha Mantra. It would have been good actually if you could play it. I don't know if you've got the audio. Would that be difficult to find? Okay, I'll speak for a minute or two, see if you can find it. So as well as pronouncing, so every now and again we can just stop when we're chanting, or we become so efficient. To begin with, when we chant, did anyone find that it takes you like such a long time to chant one round? And you're wondering, how can the devotees chant 16 rounds in 2 hours? Or 16 rounds seems like unfathomable. But after a while, you get to chant your 7.5 minute round or your 6 minute round. Some devotees become so expert they can chant in 5 minutes. But the main thing is we don't become so expert that it's just that we're doing it mechanically. We've figured out how to just rattle it off, but the mind's elsewhere. We're so expert we're not even listening to it. It's a bit like trying to turn on the radio station. You want to listen to a certain radio, and you don't actually put it right on the station. You just put it so it's off, and all you can hear is some static going on. You're not getting the benefit of the radio station. We're not tuned in. So this is a constant tuning, because the mind is constantly trying to go this way or that way. It's trying to hanker for something in the future, or it's lamenting about something in the past. Nashochiti, nakankshati, isn't it? No, hankering and lamenting, that we should avoid that. And it's in our nature to do that because we've been doing it for such a long time. We're lamenting about something we could have, should have, would have done, or hankering for something that might happen, which might never happen. So especially when we're chanting, we can take advantage of the potency of the holy name by just bringing it into the focus of the holy name. Some people in their meditation, what was that? Some people, they make great endeavors to meditate even on nothing, right? You see the Buddhist philosophers, they try to empty their mind, and they make such great endeavors to do that. And that's without even having the benefit of a transcendental sound vibration. If we make such great endeavor as well, we can learn from so many people. If we make a great endeavor, and Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita, that wherever the mind wanders, bring it back under the higher self. And that means simply this process of hearing and chanting. So before the chanting has actually got some effect, then there must be hearing. So now we can listen to what Srila Prabhupada says. It won't come through this though, will it? Or are you just playing it through that? If you play it through this, I can put the mic on. If it's not such a good recording, we can just read it. Is this the one that I was asking for? It's
this transcendental vibration by chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the sublime method for reviving our Krishna consciousness. As living spiritual soul, we are all originally Krishna conscious entities, but due to our association with matter from time immemorial, our consciousness is now polluted by material atmosphere. In this polluted concept of life, we are all trying to exploit the resources of material nature, but actually we are becoming more and more entangled in our complexities. This illusion is called Maya, or hard struggle for existence, for winning over the stringent laws of material nature. This illusory struggle against material nature can at once be stopped by revival of our Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. This consciousness is the original energy of living entity. When we hear the transcendental vibration, this consciousness is revived, and the process is recommended by authorities for this age. By practical experience also, we can perceive that by chanting this Maha Mantra or the great chanting for deliverance, one can at once feel transcendental ecstasy from the spiritual status. When one is factually on the plane of spiritual understanding, surpassing the stages of sense, mind, and intelligence, one is situated on transcendental plane. This chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is directly enacted from the spiritual platform, surpassing all lower status of consciousness, namely sensual, mental, and intellectual. There is no need of understanding the language of the mantra, nor there is any need of mental speculation, nor any intellectual adjustment for chanting this Maha Mantra. It springs automatically from the spiritual platform, and as such, anyone can take part in this transcendental sound vibration without any previous qualification and dance in ecstasy. We have seen it practical. Even a child can take part in the chanting, or even a dog can take part in it. The chanting should be heard from the lips of a pure devotee of the Lord, so that immediate effect can be achieved. As far as possible, chanting from the lips of non-devotee should be avoided, as much as milk touched by the lips of a serpent causes poisonous effect. The word Hara is the form of addressing the energy of the Lord. Both Krishna and Rama are form of addressing directly the Lord, and they mean the highest pleasure eternal. Hara is the supreme pleasure potency of the Lord. This potency, when addressed as Hare, helps us in reaching the supreme law. The material energy called as Maya is also one of the multi-potencies of the Lord, as much as we are also marginal potency of the Lord. The living entities are described as superior energy than matter. When the superior energy is in contact with the inferior energy, it becomes an incompatible situation. But when the supreme marginal potency is in contact with spiritual potency, hara, it becomes the happy, normal condition of living entity. The three words, namely Hara, Krishna and Rama, are transcendental seeds of the Mahamantra, and the chanting is spiritual call for the Lord and his internal energy, Hara, for giving protection to the conditioned soul. The chanting is exactly like genuine cry by the child for mother. Mother Hara helps in achieving the grace of the Supreme Father Hari or Krishna, and the Lord reveals himself to such sincere devotee. No other means, therefore, of spiritual realization is as effective in this age as chanting the Mahamantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So there you have it. If you want to understand the philosophy of chanting Hare Krishna, Prabhupada says it all. The mood should be chanting like a genuine cry of child for mother, understanding that we're helpless in this material world. If we think we have some business in this material world, then we won't be chanting with the proper mood. But when finally we realize that we actually have nothing to do with this material world, then we can chant taking full shelter in Krishna. There's a nice analogy Prabhupada gives in the teachings of Queen Kunti. The material covering of the pure spirit soul is an external feature, as much as fever is an external feature of an unhealthy body. The general process is to decrease the degree of the fever and not to aggravate it by maltreatment. Sometimes it is seen that spiritually advanced persons become materially impoverished. This is no discouragement. On the other hand, such impoverishment is a good sign as much as the falling of temperature is a good sign. The principle of life should be to decrease the degree of material intoxication, which leads one to be more and more illusioned about the aim of life. So if you take to chanting Hare Krishna and you feel like your material life is falling apart, that might not be a bad thing. On the other hand, there's another example. And that's because Krishna, he takes personal care of his devotees. When someone takes to chanting, then Krishna declares, this is my devotee, and he'll take personal care to make sure that they don't remain entangled in the material world and they get to go back to Godhead. On the other hand, Krishna is full of all opulences. He does not need anything from anyone, but if one is prepared to give something to Krishna, that is for one's own benefit. The example is given in this connection is that when one's real face is decorated, the reflection of one's face is automatically decorated. Similarly, if we try to serve Krishna with all our opulences, so we all have some opulence, we may not have all the riches, and even if the richest person on the planet just now, they don't have all the riches, do they? They don't have your money. They don't have your beauty, your fame, or your fortune. So similarly, if we try to serve Krishna with all our opulences, we as parts and parcels or reflections of Krishna will become happy in exchange. Krishna is always happy, for he is Atmarama, fully satisfied with his own opulence. When we connect with Krishna, then we also become Atmarama, we become self-satisfied. And we're not depending on something external. As long as we're depending on something external for our happiness, then that's going to be the cause of our unhappiness as well. But a devotee, they can be happy in opulence or in poverty. But if they've got Krishna, then it doesn't matter. Just like when Prabhupada came to the West in 1965 originally, he had nothing. In one sense, materially he had nothing, but he had everything because he had full faith in the order of his spiritual master. And on that, then Krishna made so many arrangements for him. And of course, there's that famous quote, There was one man met Srila Prabhupada before he had any disciples or any movement. He met him in New York City. Prabhupada was sitting on the park bench. And he must have looked quite odd because you didn't see sadhus in New York in those days. And so Prabhupada was explaining to him that I have so many temples and farm communities and restaurants, so many devotees. He says only time is separating. So he didn't have any doubt about that. So he may have been sitting there not knowing, where the next dollar was going to come from or where the next meal was coming from, but he knew that this was all going to happen because he went on the order of the spiritual master and he had full faith in his spiritual master's instruction and full faith in the prophecy of Lord Chaitanya that the holy name would be spread to every town and village. And when one takes this mission upon themselves to assist with that prophecy of Lord Chaitanya, then so many amazing things happen. When we read the Chaitanya Charitamrita or Srimad Bhagavatam, we read these pastimes, we think, oh, that must have been great being in those days. But we're living in those days as well. If we choose to, we can be living in those days. Because Lord Chaitanya said that this chanting of Hare Krishna will be spread to every town and village. So if we take part in that, then we're taking part in that prophecy. We're taking part in that pastime. We're not doing anything different from what Lord Chaitanya and his associates were doing 500 years ago. And we're carrying it forward under his order. And sometimes we can be a little bit shy to go and give it to other people, to go and chant or to distribute books. But the thing is, every time we do it, we always feel enriched. Because the nature of a spiritual life is that when you give, you don't end up with less, you end up with more. The more you give, the more you get. They say the giving hand is the receiving hand. So with Krishna, if he wants to give something to us with our two hands, what can we hold? And if he wants to take something away, he's known as Hari, then what can we hold? So sometimes Krishna will take things from us and we're like, oh, I'm not ready for this. And Krishna's saying, yes, you are. You're getting it whether you think you're ready or not. Because he knows what's coming and he's trying to prepare us for the ultimate test, which is to remember him at the end. Ante Narayana Smriti. So Ante means the end, just like you have Antya Lila, you have Adi Lila, the first, Madhya, the middle, and Antya, the end. So Ante Narayana Smriti, to remember Smriti, Narayan or Krishna at the time of death, that is the goal of this life. So in order to do that, we have to remember him throughout this life. So naturally, we will take shelter. So the whole chanting Hare Krishna day by day is a practice that we're taking shelter, not just like a certain time of the day where we just have to get this done. Or even as Prabhupada says, now I've chanted my 16 rounds, I can do any damn thing. I can do any damn thing I like after a chant. So the bead bag goes thrown in the corner. Okay, that's that out of the way. The holy name is not in the way. The desires, the material desires are in the way. They're in the way of our eternal happiness. Yeah, Prabhupada, so many nice quotes, maybe many of you've heard before. 16 rounds is just the beginning. Was it minimum 16 rounds on the beads and unlimited off the beads? Krishna says satatam kirtyantamam. So sat doesn't just mean when you feel like it. It means like sat, always, perpetually. Of course, we have to be practical. It's like when you're brushing your teeth or something, or you're taking prasadam, you can't be going and choke on it. Or you also have to think, it's not that when we join the temple, we renounce everything and renounce our intelligence and our brain. We have to use our brain in Krishna's services. It's called Buddha Yoga. But that's also chanting. And when we're talking amongst each other, discussing how to do services, is also considered chanting because it's of a transcendental nature. It's discussing that spiritual potency. So, of course, Krishna, sometimes when we take to chanting, sometimes we get a taste very quick. And in Kirtan, Prabhupada said that Kirtan is the safest place in the universe. So when we're chanting Kirtan, even sometimes there may be some external danger, or there may be some problem going on in our mind. But if the kirtan's going on, you can't stay on the mental platform forever, unless you're really determined to stay on it. Or if there's some external danger, when we take shelter in the holy name, then so many amazing things happen. Just like one time, some of the devotees may remember, we were in Glasgow chanting. We had a big kirtan party. And at that time, back in, it would have been late 80s, early 90s, I think late 80s, Mahavishnu Swami was there. So we had, I can't remember, maybe about 30 devotees, some from Soul Street and some from Leicester at that time. And as we had a big kirtan party on the street, and the public were liking it. If you've been in Harinam in Glasgow, you see the people love the Harinam party. You know, they like to join in, or they just like to see it. And you can see that they're relishing it. You know, it brightens up their day. Because if you if you look at Glasgow through, or any city, you know, with just as it is, then it's just what's it got to offer, really? It's pretty miserable. It's quite uninspiring. And the devotees come in and they just switch the lights on, everything becomes a different atmosphere altogether. So the people were enjoying it, but somebody must have complained, and the police came and they said, okay, you guys, you need to stop. I says, no, we need to carry on, actually. Because, well, you know, we're the authorities here, and we're saying you have to stop. We say, well, sorry, but you're not our authority. Our authority is Lord Chaitanya. Of course, we don't want to aggravate the local authorities, the police. And we weren't exactly arguing like that. It was more like, okay, well, I understand you've got to do your job, but we've got to do our job. We're Hare Krishnas and we chant on the streets. You do what you got to do. We do what we got to do. So they said, okay, if you don't stop, we'll call in the vans and we'll take you to the station. So, okay, as you wish. So we just carried on chanting. And they said, well, you can stop until the vans come. We think, well, you're going to take us away anyway. Why are we going to stop? So we'll just keep chanting. What more are you going to do? You're already taking us away for chanting. So you take us away for this amount of chanting or that amount of chanting, doesn't matter. So they were putting us in a couple of vans. And it must have been in the late 80s because there was no seatbelts. So it was before the seatbelt law, and they were cramming us in there, you know, like animals going to the slaughterhouse or something. And as they were putting us into the van, then the public were going banging on the windows to the police saying, what are you doing? Let them go. You know, why don't you go and stop some real criminals? And of course, we're feeling quite happy about that the public were supporting us. And I think the police were quite embarrassed about doing it because they'd obviously been ordered to do it. And they took us back to the station. And we'd been in that station a few times before because, you know, get arrested for doing books or something, or a small Harinam party, and they usually put you in a small cell with 2 or 3 people, or they put you in a cell on your own, and we just take it as an opportunity to chant more japa that day. And then when they let you out after keeping you in for hours, they see the devotees actually quite blissful. They're not morose or giving the police a hard time. They're just like, oh, that was great. And it comes to the point where when they let you out, you're like, oh, I wanted to chant another couple of rounds. It was nearly at 64 rounds there. And we used to have this thing where you just take a little strip of cloth. First thing you would do, this was the thing you get put in the jail, in the cell. First thing you do is tear a little strip of cloth and you tie 54 knots in it. So twice round that is 1 round. So you're like, okay, let's see how many rounds we can get done before they get back out. And secretly you were thinking, okay, if they don't let me out till about 5 o'clock, then I don't have to go back on the street again. Because if you went back on the street again, then if they let you out, you just go back on the street again. And sometimes you get back in the cell again. So anyway, they usually have these small cells, and they had a big cell which was about the size of this temple room. I didn't know it existed. But they decided to put us all in the one big cell with the instruments. And I was thinking, this can't be true. This is your fatal mistake. And told the devotees, okay, not a peep out of you, or you're in for the night. I thought, well, we don't mind. Chanting here, chanting there, we'll be chanting anyway. So we started the kirtan, and the devotees were running up and down, just having ecstatic kirtan. And then the police opened the door, and as soon as they opened the door, it just stopped like that, as if someone had pressed the pause button, as if it must be coming from somewhere else. And they started taking the devotees out 2 by 2. So, and as soon as they shut the door, the kirtan started again, like someone had released the pause button. And we later on discovered that what had happened is, when we were locked in that cell, the kirtan was so resounding that the chief of police, whose office was like another floor or 2 above, he heard it and he says, you know, what idiot let those guys in here? Get them out. So I think we were quite determined, because also at the same time in Russia, devotees were being persecuted for chanting. And we're thinking, well, what we're getting here is nothing compared to what the devotees in Eastern Europe and Russia are going through. So what they're really going to do is anyway. There's too many of us. So that was quite ecstatic. So when we engage in the Lord's service, so many wonderful pastimes take place. And you can relive those pastimes again and again. Just like sometimes friends meet and they talk about things they did, you know, mundane things. Oh, do you remember we went to this football match, or we went to the beach, or whatever? But our memories are about, do you remember we were in Sankirtan and there was this demon came along and we defeated him and he surrendered and he shaved up. So when we take to this chanting and we carry this chanting to other people, then so many amazing, wonderful things can happen to us. Our life becomes full of meaning. But also for our own personal development, we shouldn't be too anxious, wondering, you know, why am I not? When we hear about ecstatic symptoms of the advanced stages of chanting, like tears flowing from the eyes, like torrents of rain, hair standing on end, faltering of the voice, things like that, and we're thinking, oh, that's not happening to me. You know, why not? But we have to be patient. We have to be patient and continue just to practice. Don't give up on our practice. So Prabhupada gives a nice example here in the teachings of Queen Kunti again. If a woman gets married and wants to have a child immediately, she will be disappointed. It is not possible to have a child immediately. She must wait. Similarly, we cannot expect that just because we engage ourselves in Krishna consciousness, we can see Krishna immediately. But we must have faith that we will see him. So how can we have faith? How can we have faith if we're not experiencing that? We hear about these things or the results of having a deep relationship with the holy name. We can have faith because we see other people are getting that experience. Sometimes you even come into the physical association of a very advanced devotee. I remember one time Shivaram Swami was visiting Krunabhavan, and I had some questions for him, which were some problems in my mind, some doubts, etc. And I went into his room, they just disappeared. I thought, where are they? If I go away, I know they're going to come back. And I was scrambling, trying to remember what they were. And I thought, well, next time I'm going to write them down. But also, it made me think, well, if I did ask him, I'd probably feel really foolish asking in front of him. Because when you're in association of someone with great spiritual acumen, great potency, then, and I've experienced that, you may experience it yourself, so many wonderful devotees. You're in their association and you feel uplifted, you feel inspired, and you see, well, these people are really the proof that this is where you're going to end up. If you keep going the way they've been going for so many years, this is where you're going to end up. And then you can look on the other side, if you keep going the way someone else is going, not being attentive, not following properly, things like that, then this is where you end up. So it's completely up to us. Krishna leaves it up to us. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives all the different options to Arjuna what he can do. And he says, ultimately, deliberate on it as you will, and you choose what you're going to do. He gives his opinion, but he only gives his opinion. So we're interested in Krishna's opinion. As devotees of Krishna, we're interested in that. And how does that relate to my life? How can I improve myself by incorporating Krishna's opinion into my life so that our opinion becomes one with Krishna's opinion? And then there's a lot less confusion in life. When we try to keep something separate from Krishna, that creates some dichotomy, it creates some confusion. So it's not easy because we're so conditioned by the material world and we're trying to hang on to that conditioning, but it causes us so much misery. It causes so much pain and misery. We identify with so many things which are not actually us. And ultimately, Krishna will take them away. I think Krishna's trying to do that. He's trying to do us a favor, and we're hanging on. There's an interesting thing, actually. You can see there's a video. Prabhupada is speaking with these guests on the top of the New York temple. They had a skyscraper building. They had was it New York or Los Angeles? I can't remember. Anyway, it was on top of one of the temple roofs. They had a nice rooftop garden. And there were some men there who were obviously very proud of their learning, but they were atheists. And Prabhupada was talking about God consciousness. And they said, well, we don't really believe in God. And they were quite full of themselves. He just laughed. Prabhupada just laughed. He says, well, you might not believe in God, but that does not mean he does not exist. And for you, God will come as death and take everything away. So for the devotees, Krishna's taking everything away just now. He's doing us a favor so that by the time comes, we don't have anything to get taken away. It's all gone. And it's just us and Krishna. So this is the difficult thing, is just learning to let go, isn't it? Learn to let go of our attachments. But this is the process of anartha nivritti. As soon as we start chanting Hare Krishna, engaging in any of these 9 processes of devotional service, then we're engaging in this process of anartha nivritti. We're starting to dig up the attachments. To begin with, we don't even just for anyone's information who doesn't know what the word anartha means. Artha means something which is desirable. Anartha means unwanted, something unwanted. The trouble is that some of the things which are in our heart, we don't even recognize that they're unwanted. We want them. But that's not to be discouraged, because Krishna allows us to engage so many things in his service, so that even normally a thorn, if a thorn, it can stick into you and it can cause some pain, but you can use another thorn to pluck that one out. If you've ever been in Govardhan, doing parikram, walking around Govardhan Hill, devotees do this to honor Govardhan Hill and for their own personal purification and glorification of Govardhan. You do it bare feet, and sometimes you stand on some thorns, and you certainly know all about it. It's like having a needle driven into you. And you certainly feel very purified after it. But then you can look around and you find another thorn and you take that thorn out. If you try to get it out yourself, it may be difficult, but use another thorn to pluck it. So with our attachments, we can engage many of these attachments in Krishna's service through, with a spirit of renunciation, engaging whatever is in we all have different karma. We all have different levels of karma, and there's no point being envious of someone else. That's not a practical thing. It's like, oh, I wish I had that person's car, or I wish I had that person's good looks, or husband or wife or children or something like that. I'm thinking that some situation is better than our situation. But we've got our karma, just accept that's what it is. At this moment in time, that's what it is. Everything is as it should be. And just engage whatever is within our ability to do that. Engage it in the Lord's service. And ultimately, the best thing we can do with this human form of life is engage in the Yuga Dharma, which is hearing and chanting. So in different ages, we have the Satya Yuga age, where the process of self-realization is mystic meditation. And it was considered that people had a long lifetime in order to be able to do that. We don't have that in Kali Yuga. We don't have a long lifespan. In Treta Yuga, it was big fire sacrifices, where you had to have a great deal of opulence in order to make these fire sacrifices. We don't have that opulence now. If we get a car nowadays, right? There's like one time devotees, they wanted to honor their spiritual master, So they picked up Prabhupada from the airport in a Rolls Royce. They decided to club together their money and hire a Rolls Royce to pick up the spiritual master. And Prabhupada, he's not interested. It doesn't matter. But so he was brought back to the temple, and one reporter says, I see they brought you in a Rolls Royce. And Prabhupada, he's very intelligent, very sharp. You could understand this person's a little bit critical. So Prabhupada says, what is this Rolls Royce? Simply some tin and rubber. That's all it is, isn't it? Tin and rubber. And because we place some importance on it, we give it some prestige, we think that it's actually got some importance. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our the spiritual masters on our line, he says the objects of false prestige are falsely prestigious. There is no real value to them. We just place a value on it, isn't it? Just like, anybody here know what a penny black is? A penny black's a very famous and rare stamp which had the head of Queen Victoria on it. It said 1 penny, 1 day. And if you get one of them, then it's worth millions of pounds. So someone thinks, oh, this little bit of paper like that, it's worth lots of bits of paper like that. But really, what is it? If you don't know the value of it and you see it, you think, throw that in a bin, it's in the road. So it's just whatever value you place on it. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur also talks about false prestige. He says that false prestige is as valuable as the dung of a boar. So a boar means pig or hog. So in India, it's typical that the sanitation system is the hog. They come and clean up all the exhaust system of the humans. But whoever eats the hog stool, nobody touches that. So that's how valuable false prestige is. It's actually, I've got no... It's like I met one guy in Glasgow once when I was selling Bhagavad Gitas in town. And he seemed to be quite full of himself. And he says, don't you know who I am? I says, no, I don't. And he couldn't believe that I didn't know who he was. And he told me that he was some famous TV presenter. And I says, it doesn't make any difference to me. I don't watch television. And he thought I was just winding him up. I says, no, I haven't watched television for 30 years. And he couldn't believe that somebody didn't know who he was. And then he was top people in the street saying, he doesn't know who I am. I thought, what a sad case. That he's so engrossed in that everybody needs to know who I am. He couldn't believe that somebody didn't know who he was. So such fame he may have, but what is the value of that fame? Within some period of time, nobody will know who he is. And he's put so much emphasis on everybody needs to know who he is. So there's regarding chanting, this is one of the important verses. We chant every day, every morning. We chant Trinadapi, Snichena, Tarodapi, Sahasnana, Manina Manadena Kirtaniya Sudahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant in the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to fall respect unto others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So this is the formula, this is a recipe for successful chanting, and patiently. So I was going to go over there it is there. I was going to go over some of the Shikshastakam, but that's a whole series of classes on its own. So the goal of chanting, the ultimate goal of chanting, there's so many benefits from chanting, such as you may relieve yourself of anxiety. So this world is known as Kunta, or full of anxiety, and the spiritual world is known as Vaikunta, a place which is free from all anxieties. So by chanting, the first thing that happens, it actually reduces our anxiety level. This was actually, there's some scientific research on this. We had a public engagement here some years ago with the armed forces, the police, the army, the navy, and the air force, and a local councillor who also was in the forces. And we did a presentation, and we're talking about PTSD. So sometimes people were taking some microdoses of LSD for some kind of way of dealing with PTSD, but also the research into mantra meditation as having positive effects against PTSD. So PTSD is obviously, people have got very extreme anxiety there, traumatic experiences, etc. And in the material world, actually, we all have some trauma or another. We've been subject to repeated birth and death, so many times. So this chanting of Hare Krishna, first thing is that we start to become relieved if we take the chanting seriously and we start to practice it and practice the things which are conducive for chanting, such as the various kind of regulative guidelines. Then we start to feel our anxiety lessening. But ultimately, we're not simply just interested in our own peace of mind, but we're looking for Krishna Prema, pure love of Krishna. This is what is achievable from this chanting of Hare Krishna. Krishna, there's just one or two verses here I wanted to quote. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Tam Karunarnavam Kalavapyati Gu Dieham Bhaktiryena Prakashita. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is an ocean of transcendental mercy, and although the subject matter of Bhakti Yoga is very confidential, he has nonetheless manifested it so nicely even in this age of Kali, the age of quarrel. And then another verse, Nama Sankirtanam Yasya Sarvapapa Panashanam Pranamo Dukkha Shamanas Tam Namami Harim Param. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Hari, the congregational chanting of whom holy names destroys all sinful reactions, and offering obeisances unto whom relieves all material suffering. So it's considered that the age of Kali, we're talking about age of Satya and Treta. So there's 4 ages, just like we have 4 seasons. There's 4 universal ages. The Satya we discussed, Treta, and then Dwapar, opulent temple worship. We can't do that. We don't have the opulences that they had in those days. So, and Kali, this age of Kali, which is considered the winter age, then the process of self-realization is Harinam, Harinam, Harinam eva kevalam, Kalo Nascheva, Nascheva, Gatiranyata. So that simply in this age of Kali, then the most assured means of self-realization is simply to chant the holy names, to chant the names of Krishna. And we can experience it just like Prabhupada was explaining in the purport, that anyone can take part in it. We see that in the streets, anyone can take part in it. You don't have to, first of all, change your clothes and put on the tilak. They just immediately take to chanting, regardless of how they're dressed or what they're doing. They take to that chanting. And when they do that, then a little seed is planted. And each time they see the devotees or they hear something about Krishna, then that seed is getting watered more and more until next lifetime they're the ones on the street doing the chanting, attracting the other people. So we'll just stop there. I don't know if we usually take questions on the Sunday, do we? Anyone get any quick questions or comments? Okay, that's fine. I think we just want to chant. Yeah, Nivedita. Yeah, well, believe it or not, there's some mechanical things you can do to stop mechanical chanting, such as at the start of each round, we stop and we chant pranams to Srila Prabhupada, Panchatattva mantra. We don't just chant it at the start of our 16 rounds. And then, say, for the first 3 mantras, we can stop and just try to really be conscious of chanting those rounds and then pick up speed again. So when we get to the start of our beads, we can go Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, and then get back into the speed. So at least for part of the round, you might be more conscious. And just by trying to, at the start of each round, just by trying to make an endeavor to bring it, you won't be finding that you went through so many rounds and you can't even remember chanting them. And there's another thing you can do as well, because there's 16 rounds, right? If we're chanting 16 rounds. If you're chanting less than that, then don't be discouraged, just chant the best you can and try to keep it regular. If you're doing 1 round, 2 rounds a day, whatever you're doing, just keep doing that. But there's another little trick you can use to try to bring the mind is, so for the first round, you emphasize Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna. And for the second round, you can go Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So by the time, even without your curtain bead, you can chant, you can find out what round you're on. So by the time you get to your 16th round, it'll be Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. So even at that, it can still become mechanical because the mind is so powerful, Maya is so powerful. But the main thing is just to try to bring it back, keep on bringing it back. And at least at the start of each round, just try to bring the mind back again. Just say, okay, try to be attentive. I remember one time chanting and my mind ended up in the gutter. I won't tell you where it was, but it was in the gutter. And I thought, how did I get to that? So I kind of tried to trace back what led to what, and it seemed like an innocent deviation before I knew it was in the gutter. And I thought, this is Maya. Krishna just gives us a little glimpse into sea. So whatever slight deviation from hearing you think is there, it's just going to end up somewhere way off, because Maya is very expert at just giving some little apparent innocent deviation. And it may even be thinking, later on today I want to do this service, what about that? And before you know it, you've chanted a few rounds and you haven't heard a thing. If it's important, you'll remember later anyway. And if you don't, somebody will remind you that you should have done something. And at least you've chanted in a humble state of mind, you'll be able to take it. So it's just some things. If anybody would like to share anything that they find works for them to avoid being mechanical. I suppose the words are in the question itself, avoid being mechanical. And try to do it with some feeling and devotion. And if we do it in the mood that Prabhupada says, if you become familiar with this Prabhupada's Mahamantra purport, don't just hear it once and think, okay, I've heard that, that's fine, don't need to hear that again. Become familiar with it, because Prabhupada's setting the whole mood there. He's given the whole philosophy of chanting within that. So if we try to chant in that mood, feeling helpless, and we're depending on Krishna, and realizing our fragile state in this material, padam yadvi padam, there's danger at every step. And we don't realize that when we just don't take notice of it. I remember when I was young, I was at school, still at primary school, and I was wondering what would I be when I left school. And typically I was thinking, a train driver. Well, what if the train crashes? That's too dangerous. A fireman? No, that sounds dangerous as well. Policeman? No. What if you come across a criminal with a gun? And I went through every job I could think of, and I couldn't think of any job that had some kind of danger in it. And this is the conclusion, is that no matter what you're doing, where you are, we don't know the day, so we just have to try to be attentive, knowing that one day we wake up, it will be our last day. We might be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, who knows? So not to be morose, but the thing is, this is the realistic situation. And whatever we're going through in life, if we try to take shelter in Krishna through his holy name primarily, then we take that opportunity to advance and put faith in Krishna in that difficult situation. And then when the ultimate difficult situation comes, which is to leave this body, then automatically we take shelter in Krishna. That becomes our first port of call. They have these things in the airplanes, black box, you're probably all familiar with that, and it records what went wrong in a crash, etc. And there were some recordings, and generally the pilots are screaming one of two things. They're either screaming some obscenities, which we can't say here in the temple, or they're screaming for their mother, something like that. So this is, generally the sign of what we're most attached to. So we try to develop attachment to Krishna. And if we have attachments to other things, and trying to engage those things in Krishna's service so that attachment then gets herded towards Krishna. And then the attachment, which was, for one thing, then becomes, if we see everything in relation to Krishna, then that's actually, it helps us to become free from it. Sometimes Krishna will satisfy our material desires in such a way that actually we're not really that bothered any longer. The classic example is Dhruva Maharaj, who wanted a great kingdom. And we got darshan of Lord Vishnu because of his austerities. But when he seen Lord Vishnu, he realized what he was looking for was much less desirable than getting to see Lord Vishnu himself, who's the cause of all causes, where the universes are emanating from, what to speak of one tiny little planet. So he didn't want his desire fulfilled any longer, but the Lord gave it to him anyway. So he was able to take it without being attached to it. So this is the beauty of Krishna consciousness, that we can actually be in the world and not be of it if we engage in everything in our possession in Krishna's service. We have to eat, so offer everything to Krishna, find out what Krishna accepts, we offer that to Krishna. And there's no karma. People do gluten-free, this free, but karma-free diet, that's the one which is a patram pushpam palam toyam, offering everything to Krishna. So everything we do, if we do an offering to Krishna, then it becomes a source of liberation, not a source of entanglement. And this is the wonderful, unique practice of Krishna consciousness. Anything else? Okay, we'll just stop there, and I believe someone's going to do kirtan. I can maybe make a little, is it now? I can make an announcement now or later. So just a few announcements. I have to remind everybody that we have you got the gates here, the back gates? Everybody knows the back gates here. First right, that's a neighbour's property. Don't go there. He's complained about it, and he's only going to complain so many times, and then he's going to get upset. So far, he's actually been very tolerant, and we have festivals, etc. We don't want him to stand against us. So if you see anybody going down there, because he has signs outside, private property, etc. So it's quite important that we don't go into the neighbour's property. And if you see anyone going there, then ask them not to. And if you find yourself going there, don't. So a few dates to keep in your calendar. On the 31st of August, which is a Thursday, is Balaram's appearance day. Lord Balaram, God's older brother, Krishna's older brother. So it's his appearance day on a Thursday. We'll do a very small celebration on that day, and on the following Sunday, which is the 3rd, we'll do the public festival for Lord Balaram. But the day before that is the second Festival of Colours, which will be a big festival we do outdoors here. That will be on the Saturday, the 2nd of September. And on the following Thursday, the 7th of September, is Janmashtami. There'll be usual programme on the day. So if you haven't got time off work, it starts at 6 p.m. anyway, goes through till 12. And if you can get the day off and come for that. And then the programme goes from 6 p.m. There'll be kirtan in the temple room from 6 through till midnight, and then midnight arti and then feast. And then there'll be a variety programme over in Garanga Hall with kids' talents and talks, etc. So it should be a wonderful celebration of Lord Krishna's appearance. And then the following day is Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, the day where we honour and remember Srila Prabhupada and give some appreciation for how we feel he's helped us in our life. And to that end, if anybody, on that day, sometimes devotees speak some words of praise or glorification or appreciation to Srila Prabhupada, or they write it and they speak it. So if you like to write an offering, then Ashish here is going to accept offerings, and we'll put them together. You can get his email address off of him, or if you need it, I can give it. And he'll also let you know what the parameters are for Vyasa Puja offerings. Vyasa Puja, for those who are not familiar with the term, Vyas means the Vyasadev, and it means Puja means to worship or honour. So we're honouring that person who's in the line of Srila Vyasadeva. So that will be an afternoon program going into the evening. All right. So next part of the program is Kirtan. Is it Rupeshwari? Or is it Rupeshwari's Kirtan? Okay, sorry to take up some of your time, but you can chant extra. ISKCON Guru Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shishi Kontai Mahaprashanshi ki, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.
On 10th we will have Sunday program. On 8th it's Prabhupada Vyas Puja. So it's
We'll
10th.
have Sunday program, but we won't do Janmashtami because it just confuses. We found it in the past when we did that.
No, I mean the Sunday program will be as per plan. Like usual Sunday program will be there. Yeah. Okay. Because just 2 days before we already celebrating festivals, so that's why I'm asking. We have our program, right?
You mean after Janmashtami?
Yeah, after Janmashtami.
Yeah, we'll just normal program.
Normal program we do. Still do it. Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Or the devotees are too exhausted. We can
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see.
Thank you. नहीं चलेगा कैटागन में जा रहा है अब इतने ये नहीं वो वजह और घर बैठने अगर दूसरा लेकिन पड़े हाँ 10 मिनट हाँ 15 मिनट से वजन हो जाएगा 15 मिनट 500 को तो बताता ना
आप कंटिन्यू कर लो 5 डेज तक
यो
उसके बाद
5 टाइम अध्यक्ष प्रभु जी नहीं है
मैंने इनको बोला था कि आप कंटिन्यू कर दीजिए उसके बाद आप देखा
6:30 5
5:10 हुआ तो 6:30 तक ब्रेक हो जाएगा ना फिर 6:30 तक ब्रेक होगा फिर
पहले प्रैक्टिस करोगे
अब करो
पहले प्रैक्टिस करोगे नहीं आएंगे फिर यस यस 1 मिनट Hare Krishna. Let us first read the meaning of Gauranga Karuna Karo. O my dear Lord Gauranga, please show your mercy to this lowly. There is no one more fallen than myself in all the 3 worlds. Holding grass between my teeth, O Lord Gaura, I am calling out compassionate upon me and come to reside within the temple of my heart. If you do not give your mercy, seeing how fallen I am, then why are you known as Patita Pavan, the merciful savior of the fallen? I am plunged amid the violent hurricane-stricken waves in the ocean of this material world from which there is no escape. kindly give me the gift of your divine lotus feet, which is compared to a boat in which your servant may cross over the ocean of birth and death. Narottam Das, the servant of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, ceaselessly make this prayer. Let us sing this bhajan. Gauranga Karuna Koro Deenhin Jane Gauranga Karuna Koro Deenhin Jane Gauranga Karuna Koro Deenhin Jane Mosamapatita Prabhu Nahi Tribhuvane Gauranga Karuna Koro Deenhin Jane Mosama Deenhin Jane Mosamapatita Prabhu Nahi Tribhuvane Mosamapatita Prabhu Nahi Tribhuvane Dante Trinadhari Gaura Saki hai tomara Dante Trinadhari Gaura Saki hai tomara Dante Trinadhari Gaura Saki hai tomara Trinadhari Gaura Saki hai tomara Kripa kori eso amar Hridaya mandire Jadi daya न करीबे पतिता देखिया जदि दया न करीबे पतिता देखिया पतित पावन नामा किसरे लागिया पतित पावन नामा किसरे लागिया पड़ेछि भाव तूफाने नाही का निस्तार पड़ेछि भाव तूफाने नाही का निस्तार श्री चरण तरणी धाने दास दासे कर पार श्री चरण धरणी धने दासे कर पार श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु दासे रनुदास प्रार्थना करिए सदा नरोत्तम दास प्रार्थना करिए सदा नरोत्तम दास गौरंग करुणा कोरो दीनहीन जाने मोसम पतित प्रभु नाही त्रिभुवाने गौरंग करुणा कोरो दीनहीन जाने मोसम पतित प्रभु नाही त्रिभुवाने दंते तृणधरी गौरा दाकी है तुम्हारा कृपा करी ऐसो आमार हृदय मंदिरे यदि दया न करीबे पतित देखिया यदि दया न करीबे पतित देखिया पतित पावन नामा किसरे लागिया पतित पावन नामा किसरे लागिया पड़ची भव तूफाने नाही का निस्तार पड़ची भव तूफाने नाही का निस्तार श्री चरण धरणी धने दासे कर पार श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु दासे रनुदास प्रार्थना करिए सदा नरोत्तम दास हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gauranga Karuna Koro, Dinahi na jane. Gauranga Karuna Koro, Dinahi na jane. Mosama Patita Prabhu, Nahi Tribhuvane. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna. दंते तृणाधरी गौरा, दाकी है तुम्हारा, कृपा करे। कृपा करी ऐसो आमार हृदय मंदिरे। यदि दया न करीबे पतित देखिया, पतित पावन नामा किसरे लागिया। पड़ी भव तूफाने नाही का निस्तारा। श्री चरण तरणी धाने दास कर पार। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु दास रंगदास। प्रार्थना करिए सदा नरोत्तम दास, प्रार्थना करिए सदा नरोत्तम दास, प्रार्थना करिए सदा नरोत्तम दास, प्रार्थना करिए सदा नरोत्तम दास। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। गौरंगा करुणा कोरो, दीनहीन जाने, मुसमा पतिता प्रभु, नाही त्रिभुवने। Everyone. गौरंगा करुणा कोरो, दीनहीन जाने, मुसमा पतिता प्रभु, नाही त्रिभुवने। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की, श्री नरसोत्तम दास ठाकुर की, पिताई गौर प्रेमानंदी।